The reason that I do the work that I do is that I feel that it's necessary for anybody who has any interest in their future or their children's future to make things better. And in the process of the work that I've done, the one thing that I've found out has been most beneficial for the movement as a whole in terms of manifesting a sustainable future has been those moments when our interests have found a way to successfully align with who we thought was our opposition. So the moment we were able to find that place where we could make our goals their goals and work together towards the same end, maybe from different directions pointing at the same point, those have been the moments that inspired me that this hope isn't just an empty idealism.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm in the town of San Luis Obispo in California, where the Cal Poly is situated, and I'm here with an immediate past president of the student body, Tylor Middlestadt. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
But you're also part of Empower Poly,
Yep.
So that's a little different game here.
Yeah.
Looking at how the students and actually the whole college, what are you doing moving towards sustainability or green? What's happening here?
Well, over about the last 5 or 6 years at Cal Poly, there's been a continuous upswelling of grassroots support for sustainable futures, and in every way you can think of. On university, you got a lot of ideas. And so progressively over the last 5 or 6 years, more and more things have just clicked into place, further empowering these individuals and organizations and faculty, students, administrators to further these objectives.
Give me a couple examples, sort of what's happening in the early days.
In 2004, President Warren J. Baker signed the Tylor Declaration, which is an international accord among university leaders to pledge institutional resources towards eco-literacy, sustainable design, sustainable education, and things like that. Just prior to that, the university unveiled plans for the largest student housing complex in the nation, now called Poly Canyon Village, and the community was in uproar asking for a more environmentally sensitive design.
And so it had already been designed?
Yeah.
Okay.
When they announced the project, it had already completed schematics approved by the Board of Trustees at that time. So it was really difficult to make changes at that point. And there was just a huge uproar. And that's actually where the big student movement started on campus, was a group of us got together and said, you know, we need to make a difference here. The campus held a public interest comment meeting, and there was
for your whole community.
The whole community.
So not just your college community.
Exactly.
Okay,
and there was probably 90 to 120 people there, and everybody just gave them an earful and said, look, we were talking to you all summer, this and that, and we had a lot of good ideas. We submitted alternative designs and all these things.
And nothing had happened? Is that what they were saying? Is they'd given input, but
exactly
it wasn't heard
exactly.
or followed?
You know, there was no feedback to those comments, and eventually the pressure stayed on, and we kept pushing forward and wrapped it up into several other initiatives. And in I think it was spring of '04, the campus came out and said that in their RFP for actually building the design, they were going to give advantages to companies that could provide LEED equivalent design.
Yeah, let's go back and give our viewers a couple. RSV, the request for proposal.
Request for proposal
to whoever was going to construct this.
Exactly, for architects who want to design it.
All right.
So they give them a programmatic overview. We need this many beds, this many kitchens, this many doors, whatever.
I see.
And then the architect comes in, and they basically, because the state has to go with the low bid, the lowest bidded contractor, the lowest price gets the project. There's one stipulation for I can't remember exactly how they phrase it, but it's basically additional design. Okay. And the additional design that they put on this time was green building. And so they gave bonus points to architects that could design green.
For the LEED,
yep.
which is an architectural for leadership in environmental design.
U.S. Green Building Council standards.
So they would get at least some credits towards that because it might cost more.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. And so we were able to find an architect and builder who promised LEED certified. And so that was a huge victory for the community. Not just the students, but the university. The largest housing complex in the nation now is going to be a sustainable example.
And so, what kinds of features have been designed into that? Is that moved along yet? Have you know what?
I'm not completely familiar with it. I know, for instance, they are looking into like solar shades to decrease the cooling load in the buildings. Materials is a big part of it. Recycling, reusing earth that's excavated to infill, and so it's a variety of things.
It's a lot of stuff. I know that it is with that.
Yeah, it's pretty complex when you get into it.
So that's part of what gathered you all together around a real cause here.
Ironically, that was really the first active step I took into this whole wider movement. And it's funny that I can actually trace it back to these several links in the chain. That was kind of the first one. At that time, I had just got elected to the student board of directors, the Associated Student Incorporated board of directors, and in my role there, I authored a resolution calling for sustainable development on all future, or sustainable design in all future campus developments. Passed unanimous on the board, so the students now had an official voice saying, we want sustainable developments. I was then invited with a group of my colleagues at the time, not just myself, to participate in the California Student Sustainability Coalition, which was a movement in the University of California system waging the UC Go Solar campaign.
Waging the UC Go Solar.
University of California Go Solar.
Yep. For all of the university.
Yep. For all 10, well, at that time it was 9 universities. And Greenpeace was supporting that campaign actively, and they recruited the CSU in to kind of piggyback on the coattails of the movement. And about the same time that they got their policy officially approved at the Board of Regents, we were just building our campaign to demand equivalent or superior policy from the Cal State University, which is 23 campuses.
Okay, so you've got the university, UC, and you've got the
and then Cal State
University, CSU.
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
confusing.
So you've got those two both sort of in parallel tracks, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And so as the UC campaign ended, the CSU campaign began. And that was about a 2.5-year process that we engaged statewide. We had at one time we had several conferences, and these were all student empowerment conferences. We brought in trainers. We did leadership development, media communication tactics, all these things that are valuable for grassroots activists. And at one point, I think we had 11 of the 23 universities represented, which, we didn't have them all, but it's hard. It's a big state.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got thousands of miles in between some of these campuses. So in the end, a couple years later, after several trustees' visits and doing really creative things, like at our first presentation to the Board of Trustees, we all did our spiel about what our goals were and our message, and we had really very well-crafted messages. And at the end, our finale was our last speaker came up and said, and to help you all light your way to a bright and sustainable future, we're going to provide everybody in the room, all the trustees and the administrators, with the compact fluorescent light bulb, which only uses 17%. And we went into the whole thing just to show them how easy it was. You unscrew this, screw that in, and you just made a big difference. You did that all through your house, and you made a bigger difference. And so
that's a cool tactic, because to do it right there with something tangible makes it not a hurdle and not abstract.
Yeah. Well, and feedback we heard back from them sort of after they were, after we took the pressure off, after the campaign was over, when they were ready to, talk to us again, they let us know that the reason that our campaign was able to be so effective was that first and foremost, we always stayed professional in all of our public face. We never slung mud.
Yeah, that's
we never
good.
called them names. We never said they're doing a crappy job. We just said we could do better. Great job on this. We can do better. And then the other thing is we always injected humor into the campaign. So, for instance, one time when we got the policy passed, is a good example. Every time we'd show up, we'd have something symbolic like sunflowers, or pictures of suns, or we'd all wear the same yellow shirts or yellow and orange shirts. So we'd have some symbol to show that we were unified. And after the policy passed, we had all the students there. We had about 30, 40 students at the meeting, which students never go to these meetings, so it's a big deal. And we got the whole board or all the students, the chancellor of the Cal State University system, the chair of the board of trustees, and a couple members to get together in a group photo with us. We had all the administrators. We gifted them all the sunflowers just before we took the picture.
Oh, that's fun.
So we have the administrators holding the sunflowers. So those were just a couple things we did that helped, I think, it's such a glum face on our movement. It's all doom and gloom.
Yes.
The future's so in peril. And we were able to lighten that up a little bit by saying, look, it's fun to find the solutions. It's fun to say yes.
Actually, I do want to ask that question of
Yeah.
you. Sort of what your take is on the mood of the student body, and how where you think most students are to the kind of future that looks very depressing around climate change and oil depletion, and yet tons of opportunities in that as well. But it's, I mean, we're bequeathing you a world that's a little more impoverished than the one we received.
Yeah.
What kind of mood do you kind of pick up on?
Yeah, that's a really really complex answer to that question, because it's all over the place. I mean, the Cal Poly campus here, I think, is a really good, I think it's a fair picture of sort of the microcosm of nationwide, because it's a fairly homogeneous campus ethnically, socioeconomically. There's not a whole lot of diversity in those two areas, but politically and socially minded, there's just a huge diversity of ways of thinking. So we have very well-educated students. A lot of them very much understand what this world has to offer, but we have the full range of reactions to this. Every week in the paper, you'll have a letter to the editor that says, "Oh, this global warming is just a hoax. It's just a joke. It's you know." 20 years ago, they thought it was going to be an ice age, you know, which is all valid information, you know. But then you have the sort of the far polar point of view, which is a lot of students that are associated with our movement, and even some that aren't, that say, well, there's only one way to live, and that's a sustainable lifestyle, you know, and so a very unilateral approach to it. So luckily in Empower Poly and in Renew CSU, we were able to find that middle ground where we could balance, you know, a lot of the time we had to stretch to justify our movement in terms of economic interests, or in terms of politically correct framing, you know, because if you just come out there and say we've got to save the plants and the trees and the animals and the bugs and the biosphere, you know, it sounds like you're in a Bob Ross painting, you know, and but you come out there and like we did, and you come out with a message that says we can't afford not to do this. And then all of a sudden, you know, you've got the new report out of
England,
Great Britain,
which is saying the same thing.
Which is saying it's
like,
going to cost us 20% of the world GDP in 20 years, you know? And those are issues that the business community can't ignore.
And it speaks, because that's the language, the lingua franca of this time is economics.
Yep. And so I think when it goes back to the mood of the students, you've got this very bipolar perspective, because you've got the students who know, and they're centered in that feeling that, you know, it's almost like, I talk about this a lot with the students we work with, and they're driven by almost this feeling of guilt and responsibility, that they share this responsibility for what's happening to the planet. And they're driven by this strong need to find reparations, or to build that new future, that's what keeps them going. You know, and that's, for me personally, that's one of the things that keeps me going, is that I just feel it's intense responsibility to make things better. Like you said, you know, to reverse that trend of leaving behind less than you were given. But then on the flip side of that, you've got these students who are more into whether they're watching the news beat or whether they're watching the business beat, or, you know, not to criticize those two interests, but students that are just a lot less concerned with what they would consider these sort of hippie movements, or the green mentality. And they listen to the folks, and they believe the folks who say things that, oh, well, this is just a fad, or this is just a hoax, or
so they
said this in the 70s with the oil crisis, and look, we've still got oil flowing. So they use all these in geologic timescales, these very insignificant comparisons between, well, they believe this in the 70s, and they're still shouting about it now, so it's still going to be irrelevant in 30 years. And they don't understand exponential growth of problems, obviously, you know, and Hubbard,
population, and resources.
Hubbard's peak, and you know, all these. They don't understand things like, you know, plankton in the ocean, or algae in the ocean is the root in the food chain of things that everything else eats, you know?
The base.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or you know, nutrients in the soil. If those go below a critical mass, you know, where's agriculture going to be? So
that's right.
And those are really tough things to ask people to understand.
Yeah, I mean, there's complex stuff, there's science and all kinds of things. Well, I want to go back to Empower Poly, because what is that? Let's find out. What is that? So
long story short, this whole chain of events happened in California, starting with the UC system. Community colleges in LA were actually the first university system to pass a policy. UC followed their coattails, CSU followed that movement. And that all led to this really dynamic culture across the state still with the campuses, where you had these extremely creative actions happening, but they were really diverse and really like the silo effect, where we're doing great things here and you're doing great things there, and within our great things there's 7 little ones that aren't talking to each other. And so that was the nexus for for Empower Poly, where, you know, those of us who were sort of at the leadership positions of the Renew CSU campaign, once the policy passed, we didn't have anything to fight for anymore.
Sure.
So we had to
You've
look
done your job.
so how do we implement, right? We've got the words, now how do we implement? And so we kind of turned to look back inside the campus, and we said, well, look, we've got a biodiesel club that's building a reactor, that's got financing, that's got faculty support, student support, industry support. We've got a hydrogen power club that's building hydrogen fuel cells right now, hydrogen powered vehicles. I mean, and this is all students researching these technologies and applying them. We've got a renewable energy club that's facilitating the solar decathlon team for Cal Poly.
Solar decathlon.
An international competition that's funded by the Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Energy. They invited 19 teams from around the country to compete, and Cal Poly, I think, came in 3rd overall.
Wow.
You know, and this is all facilitated through student clubs, student-led, fundraised. And so we've got a number of clubs, and we just invited all those presidents together, the presidents of all those clubs, and asked them, would you be interested in combining our energy for a common goal, which would be, I think, if I can remember our mission statement, semi-verbatim, establishing Cal Poly as a university leader in stewardship of economic, environmental, and social resources, and working to improve the collaboration between students, staff, faculty, administrators, and the surrounding community. So we had this very huge vision, very broad, so that we weren't leaving anybody out. That's basically, look, we want a sustainable future, and we think we need to work together to get it.
Okay.
And so that was really the founding pillars of the coalition. It's young. I think we had our first meetings last spring, so spring of '05. Spring of '06. Yes.
Really? That is very young.
Yeah.
So you got to do some work in that direction this fall, right? Tell us about it.
Well, there's still, I think, some growing pains in the group. In last spring, we had a really good facilitated visioning session where we brought together a bunch of students, and we had a facilitator, and, you know, went through the usual stuff of, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are the goals? What are the strategies and tactics? And so now what we're trying to do, and what I think we've been effective at lately, is narrowing down a couple small things we can do that'll make a big difference. So one thing that just happened on our campus was SunEdison, who is a solar financer. Okay. They're working with Cal State University to provide solar panels at campuses across the state.
Okay. Okay.
They're using a new financing model. Well, it's not new, but it's a modern financing model, which is called solar site lease or solar service agreement. And so SunEdison actually pays for, finances, installs, and maintains the system over its entire life.
Photovoltaics,
exactly.
Solar panels,
solar electric.
Right.
And the university just pays to purchase the energy that's produced. And it's written into the contract that they pay a small percent less than market rate. So they're paying less than the grid for solar energy because somehow this I don't know.
It works. It must work.
It works. They're doing it. Goldman Sachs, a very, very well-established banking company, is backing the model. You know, with significant resources. And so anyhow, we just finished our project on campus. We have a 140 kilowatt system now on a building on campus. And so our coalition decided that what we need to do is we need to collaborate with the university and the community and have kind of a commencement event or some kind of a celebration that we've got it now, you know, a commissioning ceremony or something. We haven't come up with the catchy name yet. So we've been working with the local coalition, Smart Energy Solutions Summit, and a group that's come out of that they're, you know, kind of in the same stage we are, is forming their own sort of mission and their own vision.
So they had an event. Right.
Yeah.
There was a summit.
Exactly.
There was a get-together.
Yeah.
So were students part of that? Did any students go?
Students were a big part of the attendance.
Really?
And a big part of the exhibitions, the exhibits. I think we were kind of late in the game for the planning, but I think we're always in the back of the minds of the folks that were planning it. It was for instance, it was held less than a mile from campus. So the campus connection was always, I think, a conscious goal. But there's some amazing people that were a part of it. It brought together some really diverse interests. The SLO Chamber of Commerce was there. The Sierra Club was there. Students were there. Faculty groups were there.
So I understood also that some students volunteered and worked on the event.
Yeah, there's a lot of faculty on campus that understand that this is a really important issue, and so they're willing to give extra credit or, you know, certain majors or certain programs have volunteer community service requirements. There's several classes that require, you know, 10 hours over the quarter, so students could pledge service towards an event like this. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, and the networking there for the students, I think, was just a great opportunity. For the coalition especially, we've received several offers for support and collaboration just because we set up a table there.
That's great.
And we got to talk to all these other leaders from the regional.
Well, it's also, I think, going to be a great experience for, you know, you're being invited to the table to be co-players. And though you are younger people than probably most of the others,
Absolutely.
I'm sure that those folks are visionary enough to say it's that handing you the reins, you're getting trained and grounded in how do we work together. What I hear over and again is in the interviews we've had here in San Luis Obispo, it's coalition, it's partnering, it's alliance building, it's building bridges from across strands of our society that may be in opposition under some topics, but I think what I feel from all of you is this, we got to work together.
Exactly. And I think that from the student perspective, like you said, we're at the table now. That's something.
We're not going to wait until you're you know, out of college.
Exactly. And I think that's something that has been a really conscious driver in our movement, is that we've had this desire to just be at the table. You know, we don't care if you listen to us. We don't care if you implement all of our ideas, but at least, you know, allow us to be a stakeholder in the process.
You need to be in the conversation.
Yeah, and so that's, you know, that's one of our conscious goals in everything we're doing. Planning this event with the university, respecting the boundaries that need to be respected in terms of ownership of the event, ownership of different parts of the event. They've invited us to be on their sort of premier speakers list to represent the students. They didn't invite Associated Students Incorporated because they knew that we had folks that were associated with that. And, you know, so we're being respected now as a voice for students in this coalition, you know, as well as ASI is on campus also. They're invited to all kinds of these things as well. So I think it's been hence the name, Empower Poly. You know, that's really what we're trying to do, is empower that college generation to be at the table, you know, and have that voice. Yeah, because, you know, you have an enormous stake in this, as we said earlier. And I think that to marginalized students, and my hope is that you'll also bring in the high school students, I mean, not you necessarily, but that they'll be brought into the table as well, and realize that what we are doing is shaping your future. Yeah. You got to be there. Yeah. And there's some really creative things going on around the country that are aiming towards that. I don't know that we've effectively gotten into high schools in a large way, but for instance, the Sierra Student Coalition is an amazing organization that trains student activists, grassroots activists, and I participated in one of their trainings, I think, 2 summers ago. And a majority of the attendants were in high school still. Great. I was, I think, 3rd or 4th year in college at the time, and my peers at this time were 16, 17-year-old high schoolers from all around the country. So I think Sierra Club is one of the organizations that has really been able to engage the high school crowd. Bioneers, a really amazing conference in Marin County once a year, has the Bioneers Youth Initiative. I think they call it something, it's probably not Youth Initiative, but they have a whole youth tent, this big geodesic dome they set up right in the middle of the whole thing. And there's always youth programming going on in there, from poetry to youth leaders sharing their achievements to how to work with the media, all tailored towards the youth lens and the young person's mind. And so I think there's some really tangible and effective efforts going on, but more with the colleges. I think universities are right now the catalyst. I would imagine that the university students, you know, you're more mature, you're looking at bridging right into the world of civil society or whatever, wherever your work is going to take you or where you want to go. It makes sense to me. Yeah. We only have about 3 minutes left, which is not a lot. So I wanted to give you, is there anything else, what else haven't we talked about here that you feel good about, you know?
interested in?
Man, there's more than 3 minutes, but I'll try. I think one of the things I want to touch on that we touched a lot locally, but there's a lot going on around the country that should be recognized also, and maybe be future shows for this program.
Okay, great.
Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, I think a majority of the campuses now have passed, have initiated fees they've voted for fees to pay. So they voted to increase their own fees to purchase renewable energy or to build renewable energy.
Wow.
Some of them have gone 100% off grid, the smaller private schools. All over the eastern region. There's these regional networks. There's the Southeast Students for Renewable Energy. I was invited to one of their conferences last year to present on what we did in California, and just met these amazing students from Georgia, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. I mean, and they're all going solar, or they're all going wind power. Energy Action is a national coalition focused on engaging the youth and focused on empowering the youth. And they've sponsored a program called the Campus Climate Challenge. And it's a national challenge trying to get 500 clean energy victories on campus by 2008. 500
clean energy victories.
Which is
now,
anything,
what is that?
Which is anything from greenhouse gas reductions through green building, installing solar panels, energy efficiency measures, anything that can show that it's making an effort towards cleaning our energy system or greening our energy system. It doesn't have to be everything.
But just some action that's real, that really counts.
And they're doing a great job of mobilizing the resources and the energies of the students and giving them something to hope for and work towards. So those are just a couple things that I think deserve to be mentioned. And I just think the energy that campuses are putting into it, and more importantly, the reciprocal energy that the campus administrations, in many cases, are sharing. They're now realizing that our goals are their goals. You know, we're in the same direction. It's all about the future.
Sounds like you're helping to push them into that kind of awakening. Because your own faculty have created something whose name I cannot recall.
Surge. Yeah.
Surge, which is a great pun, regardless of what it means. That's great.
Yeah.
So, in our last minute, only a minute.
Absolutely.
What gives you inspiration? What keeps you going?
It's like I told you before. It's this I feel a responsibility to much more than just my peers or myself or my family, but just I think that there's a conscience inside of me that I think a lot of us share that keeps us going, and as well as that I've had some pretty tangible achievements in the fights that I've waged. That it's been like, yeah, we can do it. You know?
Great.
So.
Thank you for both that moral fiber, that center that you're listening to, and keep those achievements coming. I expect it a whole lifetime's worth from you at the rate you're going. Thanks for joining me.
Hope so. Thank you.
You're watching Peak Moment, Community Responses for a Changing Energy Future. I'm Janaea Donaldson. Join us next time.